All right, I'll call to order this College Township Council regular meeting for Thursday, June 6th. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Is there anybody here for public open discussion? That'd be for items not on tonight's agenda. Anyone online?
Nope.
Okay, moving on. Do any council members wish to add business items to the agenda tonight? Okay. All right, so we'll start out with a special presentation, presentation of the proclamation P-24-05 to the Center LGBTQ+. Susan, if you would, please.
This is a proclamation P-24-5, LGBTQ+ Pride Month, June 2024. Whereas in June of each year we celebrate lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, LGBTQ+ Pride Month to commemorate the Stonewall riots that took place in June of 1969 and are recognized as a catalyst for the movement of LGBTQ+ rights. Whereas all College Township residents should be able to live and work in a safe and inclusive community free of discrimination. And whereas our LGBTQ+ community members are integral contributors to our social, civic, economic, artistic, cultural, spiritual, and academic vitality in the State College area and Center region. Recognizing and valuing the uniqueness in each of us empowers all of us. And whereas we recognize that discrimination and exclusion continue to exist in the daily lives of LGBTQ+ individuals, and whereas College Township is committed to protecting the civil rights of our LGBTQ+ community members, and we stand in solidarity with LGBTQ+ Americans in their ongoing struggle against discrimination and injustice. And whereas the College Township Council and staff remain committed to ensuring its policies and practices do not discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Council of the Township of College, Center County, Pennsylvania, that we hereby recognize the month of June as LGBTQ+ Pride Month, duly adopted the 16th day of May 2024 by Council of Township of College, Center County.
Okay, great. Go ahead. We have a representative here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Michelle Lee Garrett.
Hello, everyone.
Let's not go in front of that TV.
Oh, in front of the TV. Yeah, that looks better. Close up. Okay,
And
thanks.
Michelle Lee Garrett will give some comments.
Absolutely, thank you so much. Hello, everyone. As both a board member with Center LGBT+ and a resident of College Township, I am honored and grateful to accept this proclamation. As alluded to in the proclamation, the first Pride was indeed a riot, and it was the queer community fighting back against unjust attempts to criminalize our existence. Through decades of advocacy and hard work, in close partnership with our allies and with our supporters, critically, including those in elected office, in municipalities and in government, we have gotten to the point where Pride is a celebration. We have made great progress in the years since the LGBT rights movement first began, and we have made that progress hand in hand with those brave enough to stand in solidarity with us, as you all have done tonight. And for that, we are indebted and we are grateful. Despite the progress that we have made, queer people are still embattled, both in this country and around the world, and the fight remains to be won. Progress is a living thing. Victories are hard fought and can easily slip away without due diligence and vigilance to the maintenance of justice. And that maintenance of justice requires a broad coalition. It requires all of you. It requires advocates and allies at every level of government, and we are proud and we are grateful to stand alongside you in that noble effort. So, once again, thank you. It is an honor, and Center LGBT Plus is very grateful for this proclamation and this recognition. Happy Pride.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to plans. P1 is Mount Nittany Elementary School Preliminary Final Land Development Plan.
Great. Thank you. I do have a brief presentation. This is the Mount Nittany Elementary School Land Development Plan presented by ELA Group and on behalf of the State College Area School District. This is a 35,865 square foot elementary school building addition. We have one-way passenger vehicle access and drop-off being included, 51 new parking spaces, upgrades to pedestrian connections internal to the campus, and stormwater management elements as well being directed into the inlets of piping that will convey the stormwater to detention facilities. Here's an overall view of just the general project area. And some of the plan highlights. You can see there at the bottom of the screen, we have the actual addition that is going to look similar to the building that exists there above. And this also came with 3 waiver requests. The Planning Commission saw and heard this. They made a recommendation for council to approve these waiver requests. I'll go through them briefly. The first is a basin bottom slope. So in order to allow the basin to be graded at a slope of 1% instead of the prescribed 2%, to allow the detained water a greater opportunity to infiltrate into the soils and recharge the groundwater into the area. So the Planning Commission and staff do recommend the approval of this fairly de minimis request. And then we have the basin pond depth. To allow the basin pond depth to be 0.39 feet greater than the prescribed 5 feet maximum, to be able to maintain the existing softball field and maintain distance separation from the adjacent properties. The Planning Commission also recommended the approval of this waiver. And then the third is a parking space reduction. You will see on the plan that there is an area designated for parking. That area is designated at the first land development plan approval as it went through years back, but this area still allows for the expansion of parking with the amount of spaces that are required in the zoning ordinance. So this is just a request for that area to remain and for those spaces to be able to be, designated there for the future use. So I know Mr. Chair Todd Smith is here. If you have any further questions, I'm sure he'd be able to
Okay.
do some more.
Todd, do you want to elaborate on anything or just wait for questions?
I don't really have anything to elaborate on. My name's Todd Smith with ELA Group. With me is Mike Fisher from Director of Facilities with State College School District. The waiver requests, the one in particular, the pond depth, that is only for the 100-year storm event. It's not a constant depth reduction over a typical daily storm events. It's just for the 100-year storm event. The circulation is going to maintain the same. We're coming off of Brandywine Drive, across the front of the middle school at the top of the page, and looping back around and exiting onto Brandywine Drive. We're adding a loop parallel to the existing school in the new addition. That'll be for parent drop-off. So we'll have longer queuing links for the parents to drop off. And then there's some visitor parking and some staff parking inside that island as well. The buses will remain the same. They're around the loop on the opposite side where they are existing. And that area can also be used for overflow parking for events and special events that are occurring at the school. And that's a whole overview. I think Lindsay's introduction is a good overview as well.
Yep.
I'll answer any questions you might have.
Members, staff, staff, do you have anything else?
I will say the planning commission did have one recommendation, and it was to add some signage where the parking area is, some for, designated as future parking. It didn't go into the recommendation, but it was just something that they brought up that I wanted to make council aware of.
Okay. Council, questions or comments? Eric, you want to go?
Sure. Todd, welcome back. I went back and actually watched the sketch plan meeting. You brought the sketch plan, which again, I want to say it again, appreciate you and the school district taking the time. I mean, that can be very effective. The couple questions on the waivers, help me understand. I support them, by the way, all three of them. But if 1% grade is better because more water will infiltrate, why do we have a 2% minimum?
Well, I think originally the idea of the 2% was to make sure that the water would drain, and that if there was some bad grading at the bottom of the basin, you wouldn't end up with ponding.
Okay.
But now with the GPS on the dozers and things like that, it's easier to get the grading right on rather than sort of just close.
Okay, so 2% gave us more margin for error.
Yeah.
Before we became more technically proficient or accurate. Okay, and it seems like 100-year storms are happening more often than every 100 years.
It'll be less than 100 years before the next one.
And I no questions at all on the rest of the waivers. In fact, I think you find this body pretty supportive anytime somebody comes on and wants to build less parking. So, in watching the video, there was 4 things that we spent a lot of time talking about. I don't know that any of them could actually be mitigated through design, but I want to mention them again just in case there was any thought or any additional changes put in. We spent a lot of time talking about the stacking on Brandywine. And again, I'm not sure that there was no suggestion on what to do. It was just a concern that was expressed. We talked, without you, a lot about Brandywine and speed bumps and that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to ask for the record, are we all cleaned up there at Brandywine? In February, we were still talking about dirt piles in the road and buses not able to get through.
Yes, the Brandywine's been cleaned up.
Okay. Do we have speed bumps in yet?
No, we're discussing that with the developer.
Okay. It didn't affect you, but tangentially it was an issue with us. And then we talked a little bit about pet access, but I think it was mostly questions we had, and I think you satisfied those questions. And then the one thing that I just want to remind you is we also, given that Brandywine is open now, if the opportunity presents itself that the school bus routing can take better advantage of Brandywine to help mitigate the traffic on Villacrest, certainly this body would appreciate that, along with the residents in Panorama Village. Again, not related to land development plan, more of an operating issue, but this is going to, I don't want to say aggravate it, but certainly compound it a little when this opens. That's all I have.
Okay. Sue, questions or comments?
Thank you for coming back, Todd. And I also went back and looked at our sketch plan because we did talk quite a bit, in particular about the pedestrian access. And so I'm a resident of Fieldstone, which is right across the street from the school. And we have had some challenges with the school crossing. We do have a member of the community here. And so I guess my concern is, I know that we're not expecting to get more students in the school, but it sounds like we're anticipating more parent drop-offs, which means more vehicles coming in and out. And that's been a concern. The 2 crossings from the Fieldstone neighborhood have not always been well marked. There's been some problems. The signs have been knocked down. So I guess I'm going on record that I have some concerns about safety at those pedestrian those pedestrian walkways. And then the other piece, looking at the memo, I guess, from ELA, there was mention that new connections within the campus will be developed. And so that's something that's anticipated to happen in the future. And is that part of some of the discussion we had at our last meeting about goat trails? Is that a future plan to revise or?
Well, what I was referring to in that memorandum was, right now, there's some connections from Panorama
Okay.
and from the middle school to the elementary school. We are continuing that series of connections, and even from the new addition, coming back around and connecting to, so you can get to the playground area.
Right.
From this location. We're creating this access as well. This is a new access. We're tying it into the system also. The one discussion point I think you did bring up was crossing Brandywine and coming down along here. And we did bring this around the radius and across here to come into the main entry.
Great.
That way, we're not crossing the wide throats.
Okay.
And then they have the opportunity, if they want to, come across and down here and in as well.
Okay. Thank you. I think those were my only questions.
Okay. I don't have any questions or comments. We do have a proposed, if anyone wants to take a stab at that. And then we'll open it up to discussion.
Yeah, I'll get a motion out here. Mr. Chair, let's see if I can get this queued up here. I recommend the council approve. I move to approve the Mount Airy Elementary School preliminary final land development plan dated April 22nd, 2024, and last revised May 13th, 2024, subject to the following 11 conditions. Within 90 days from the date of approval by council, all conditions be satisfied, final signatures must be obtained, and the plan must be recorded with the Center County Recorder of Deeds Office. Failure to meet the 90-day recordation time requirement will render the plan null and void. Number 2, pay all outstanding review fees. Number 3, address to the satisfaction of the township engineer any outstanding plan review comments, which I don't believe there are any right now, are there?
Correct.
Number 4, fully comply with College Township Code Section 180-12. Number 5, post surety as approved by the township engineer prior to recording. Number 6, provide proof of NPDES approval. Number 7, record approved DSAME. Number 8, record approved DSAME. Number 8, recommend approval to the parking, recommend approval. Well, the condition is we are approving the parking reduction request. In fact, 8, 9, and 10 basically just say we support the 3 waiver requests, 8 being parking reduction request, 9 being the basin pond depth waiver request, and number 10 being the basin bottom slope waiver request. And then lastly, number 11, all conditions must be accepted in writing within 7 days from the date of conditional approval letter from the township engineer.
Do you have a second?
A second.
Okay. All right, is there any further discussion?
Well,
Council? Do you have any-
Before we vote, I would just urge through the facilities, through the staff here, to follow up on the commitment to revisit any possible routing opportunities you have to reduce, within reason, reduce the impact on Villicast Drive and Panorama with busing. I would be making that every year, whether you were building this or not. But since you're here today, when Brandywine is now open, I just want to go on record as noting that opportunity exists. And no one knows better than me the challenges associated with making routing changes and making all the pieces fit together.
Okay, Susan, you did mention there was someone from the public here. I didn't know if anyone would like to speak to this prior to us voting. No? Okay, go ahead. Please approach. And just say, state your name and where you reside.
Hi, I'm Danielle Salerno and I reside in the Fieldstone community. Oh, sorry, teacher.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Danielle Salerno. I reside in the Fieldstone community across the street. from Mount Nittany Elementary. And I do want to bring up the fact that for people that live in the Fieldstone community, they are considered designated walkers by the school district. There is no other transportation alternative provided by the school district for these children to cross the street. And so when we moved into our homes in 2018, there was quite a bit of discussion on the Fieldstone Facebook page about the safety concerns of the crosswalk, the speed that cars travel when they cross the crosswalk. You see it every day as a pedestrian walking your child across the street. And one of the solutions that came up, we went to the school board and we said, could we please get a crossing guard? Could we please get something to keep these kids safe? And nothing has ever materialized. And so the solutions that were given were saying, well, can the older kids maybe help the younger kids across the street? That's not the responsibility of those older children. Their responsibility is to get to school themselves. And so, we've kind of communally tried to come up with solutions for these crosswalks. And eventually, I've personally filed police reports because we've talked to people who are speeding in the crosswalks. And they'll say things such as, so you want me to slam on my brakes just because your kid's in the crosswalk? And I'm like, yes, I do. I want my kid to go to school safely, right? And I understand this road is used for private vehicles. It's not necessarily just a school road. But there are school children that are crossing the street, and there are quite a few of them from our community. And so while these development plans are great, and while there are plans to make sure that kids get to school safely with their buses and with their parents that are dropping them off, please keep in mind that there are children who are crossing, who are pedestrians, who, every day, it is a concern of parents to send their children across these streets and these crosswalks. And so the larger, the area grows, that we have more homes. I can only imagine that people at the Village of Canterbury who are, crossing Brandywine from the other direction, and people who are moving into our neighborhood, who have no other alternative to get their children to school. It's incredibly frustrating to continue to ask for crossing guards, to continue to ask for safety for these children. If something happens, it's going to impact this entire community. Right, it is going to really leave a mark on every parent of the community. And so I don't understand where the resources are coming from for the high school for crossing guards, from other elementary schools for crossing guards. And we don't have one here as we're worried about expansion and getting other kids to school on buses and getting other kids to school through their parents dropping them off. These kids don't have those alternatives to ride the bus. They're designated walkers. There is no bus assigned to them.
Thank you.
So, thank you so much.
Thank you. Council members, any comments?
Well, it sounds like Todd has a
Yeah,
comment, but while he's warming up, question, is Brandywine a school zone? You know how you have...
It has the 15 mile an hour flashing signals, yes.
So if people are driving faster than 15 miles an hour, we have the same fallback process as anywhere else in the area where...
Yes.
We have habitual issues there. We can ask the borough to monitor that.
Correct.
Okay, because 15's pretty slow.
Yes, and the borough does conduct speed enforcement in school zones on a regular basis. I don't recall any that have been done there, at least in the recent past, but that is a request that we could pass on to the State College Police.
Okay.
Yeah, I support that.
Hey, I'm just looking at things we can do on our end.
Yeah. Yeah, Mike?
I did want to touch on earlier this year, I did have a discussion with Ms. Salerno and had discussions with Randy Brown as well from the school district. I know through the end of this school year, we worked to try to have a little bit more police presence in the area, working on signage as well, and that's something that I know at the staff level we're investigating. We did also have a discussion with the school district about the potential for crossing guards. While that hasn't moved yet, it's something that we're on record talking to the school district about, and it would potentially be a shared expense at some point as we look forward, if it does happen, if we look forward into the next school year. So just wanted to kind of close that loop as well.
Okay.
I just wanted to add, so
Just for record, state your name, please.
Mike Fisher,
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
Director of Facilities, State College Area School District. So just a few things in regards to safety of the children. You know, we do have signage out on the streets that we just replaced, I think, 2 or 3 of them because they get run over all the time. So we are constantly monitoring that. Our staff is monitoring that. And 2, we believe with the expansion and the adjacent parking area to the school, will alleviate some of the queue traffic during pickup and drop off. That's one of the complaints that our office gets quite a bit. People queuing down Brandywine waiting to pick up their children. And we feel as though this secondary loop that we're installing, or plan to install, will alleviate a lot of that as well. And I should also note that we are looking at a project to, we do own the connector between Brandywine and Valley Vista. So we are looking at some traffic slowing techniques through that area as well, because we do have children going back and forth kind of across that road. And we see a lot of people using that road as a thoroughfare, going through. And there's not really, great crosswalk signage through there. So, Brandywine's a township road. Now that it's open through, things could change as far as traffic patterns and such. So.
Yeah. Susan?
And I think your comment is important. You've replaced those signs a couple of times because they've been run over. And that is a real concern, because if a sign has been run over, it could be a child one day.
Sure.
And I do see this on a daily basis, leaving and coming in and out of the neighborhood. So I appreciate the concern you're expressing tonight. And, certainly would encourage the township to do everything they could to look at all the safety options for the walkers. Because I think your point is also well taken. With Brandywine open now, and Mrs. Salerno pointed out that there will be children coming from the neighborhoods over on the other side of Brandywine, so we are going to have more designated walkers coming through there. And it feels chaotic in the morning, and I'm sort of keeping my eye on it, but it is pretty chaotic. So I would encourage people to keep that front and center if possible.
The crossing guard thing I find interesting because I just have limited knowledge. My children go to Spring Creek, and usually it's teachers that are stepping in for the morning and just doing that crossing guard duty. So I feel like, and maybe I'm incorrect on this, I feel like the school's just handling it on their own.
Yeah, I know, and each school building is a little bit different.
Yeah.
High school is a hired staff. I actually think it's a third-party group that they bring in. I know a couple of the others I think are internal staff, but it's one of the things that we have had a discussion with Randy about is, certainly if that's something that the school district is on their list, the township is more than willing to entertain it.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like it's it's already being done elsewhere. It's a pretty easy thing to kind of just step up and do until a longer term solution comes about, right? If it's that much of a concern. So.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Did you have anything else?
Yeah, I'd like to ask for one clarification on the motion. Item number 6, provide proof of NPDES approval. Is that does that have to be done prior to plan recording?
Yes. Yeah, because we won't sign off on the stormwater. Municipal stormwater won't get signed until you have the NPDES.
Okay. We will never make that 90-day deadline because it's an individual permit going straight to DEP, and it's probably a minimum of a 6-month review and approval process.
Well, that's a very legitimate reason why you can't make that deadline. So I wouldn't see a problem with extending that if that turns out to be the case.
Yeah, and we have a process to extend plans. The first one is free of charge, and then once you get into further ones, they do start, but yeah.
Okay, and then does that change the motion at the beginning? It says the plan would be null and void if we do not meet the conditions within the 90 days.
Yes.
So does that part of the motion need to get changed?
No, the extension would cover that.
Yeah.
Extension, okay.
Yeah, we'll get in touch with you if you're not recording the plan within 90 days, just to remind you, hey, you need an extension, and that'll come before council.
Okay.
And then be on a consent agenda somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There's one on the consent agenda
So
tonight.
Todd won't have to come to that meeting.
Yeah.
No.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll call a question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, we have none opposed. Motion carries. Okay, moving on to P2, the PSU Soccer Operations Center Preliminary Final Land Development Plan.
Thank you. Stahl Schaefer, on behalf of the applicant, the Pennsylvania State University, is proposing to add a 2-story permanent building near the southeast end of Jeffrey Field on the State College campus. The building will be used as a support facility for soccer program at Penn State. Ancillary improvements to the project include additional parking, concrete sidewalks, and of course, stormwater management. They are doing an underground system here, which is what the Planning Commission had some questions on, and Mr. Veo is here from Stahl Schaefer Engineering if there are further questions regarding the plan, Mr. Chair.
Okay,
I don't have anything else to expand upon, but I will entertain.
just say your
questions.
name, please.
Oh, Mike Veo from Stahl Schaefer Engineering, here on behalf of Penn State University.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, council, let Susan go first. Any questions or comments?
So my question, a couple of questions. This is in addition to the inflatable structure that we just approved recently?
It is adjacent to the inflatable structure,
Okay.
but it is not connected.
Right, not connected. And we had some questions about the stormwater management with the inflatable structure. And I'm no expert on stormwater management, but is there something about the stormwater management plan that you had for the inflatable structure that would be different, or this is in addition to? How does that fit together?
This underground facility will handle both projects. That's
Okay.
how that works. This has been revised since the IPAS system, and that's all been run through Jerry Northridge at the
Okay.
township level. But yes, both projects feed into the same
Okay.
detention system.
Okay, anything else? Eric?
No, this being reviewed under the UPWP district, so we're not looking at it as a site land development plan. I really like that. Really like that we don't have, a set of requirements for each one of these facilities. Instead, we're looking at the entire area. So as a result, I have no questions.
Okay, I have no questions. Anyone care to make a motion? Staff, anything before? All right.
I move to approve the Penn State Soccer Operations Center Preliminary Final Land Development Plan dated April 22nd, 2024, last revised May 13th, 2024, subject to the following conditions. 1, within 90 days from the date of approval by council, all conditions must be satisfied, final signatures must be obtained, and the plan must be recorded with the Center County Recorder of Deeds office. Failure to meet the 90-day recordation time requirement will render the plan null and void. 2, pay all outstanding review fees. 3, address to the satisfaction of the township engineer any outstanding plan review comments. 4, fully comply with College Township Code Section 180-12. 5, provide proof of NPDES approval. And 6, all conditions must be accepted in writing within 7 days from the date of the conditional approval letter from the township engineer.
Okay, any further discussion?
Second.
Yeah, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Jump the gun. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, we have none opposed. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
P3, Crew 814 Planned Residential Development Sketch Plan.
The Planning Commission saw the sketch plan the other Tuesday evening, and I put together just a brief presentation about what is a planned residential development, because the next presentation talks a lot about it. So if you don't mind, I'll go through this. So what is a planned residential development? The municipality's planning code calls it an area of land controlled by a landowner to be developed as a single entity for a number of dwelling units or a combination of residential and non-residential uses. I think PRDs come into play when there's a different vision that isn't going to specifically meet the regulations within our zoning ordinance. So there are some opportunities for some negotiations. The process is a lot similar to what we do with subdivision and land development, although tonight we're calling it a sketch plan, but it's technically a pre-application conference that we're having this evening. That's just the term we use in the PRD ordinance. Next step will be the tentative plan, which is reviewed and recommended by the Planning Commission and approved by Council. And then we have final plans on top of that tentative plan, which should not stray far from the tentative plan once that is approved by Council. Some general requirements. Back in late 22 and early 23, we prepared a zoning amendment update to incorporate some form-based, light, I'd call them, regulations into our planned residential zoning district, and we also allowed for planned research and business park districts, or the PRBD, to become an actual PRD. We also discussed density and intensity, and some things that can be waived under PRDs are density and intensity, height, uses, some setbacks. But we did add block standards and frontage standards in here too, to kind of get us to that next step of that code that we're looking to do in Dale Summit. And then, of course, phasing and scheduling is also a part of planned residential developments. And if the density is met, then workforce or attainable housing also comes into play. So I just wanted to go through that quick presentation. I know we did it with the Planning Commission. This is going to be the first opportunity for a lot of them to go through the PRD process. So we just wanted to make sure everyone's on the same page as we move forward. But Mr. Chair, I believe the folks from Crew 814 also have a PowerPoint presentation for you that they would like to go through.
Yeah, please step on up.
We'll wait for that PowerPoint to come up, but I will state my name. My name is Ron Borger, Senior Project Manager with Pantera. Have my project team with me tonight, John Sepp, also with Pantera, Matt Fleckinger with Burkentine, and Doug Hill, he's with Worcester. He's a traffic consultant. So, we are proposing a planned residential development called Crew 814. Put together this slide deck, table of contents. We're going to run through project narrative, project location, zoning district, zoning matrix, concept design, some building concepts, a little bit of transportation, and a rough project timeline. So project narrative, I don't know if you guys had read through that, pretty comprehensive. I'm not going to read it word for a word, but basically kind of looking at the property, I think looking through the whole Burkentine concept, really about building communities. So looking at how the layout of the property kind of lends itself. We try to be good stewards, so try to lay out the development. You know, the land was a given to us, so we have to be good stewards of how we prepare the tentative plan, the sketch plan, and the layout of the entire project. So project location, it's up off of Shiloh Road. 99 intersection is roughly north, maybe a couple hundred yards. Right now, I think and to the west is the UAJA property. Zoning district, it is zoned Planned Research and Business Park District with the PRD. So that is the current zoning district. Zoning matrix. So the PRD is allowed within that zoning. Minimum lot area is 35 acres. This particular parcel is 45. The building heights, we have that in there, and that's really up to council. That can be decided upon, as we kind of move through the whole process. Density, So in that particular zoning district with the PRD, we're allowed for multifamily, 36 dwelling units per acre. So all total, we could have 846 of the multifamily, and the townhomes, about 22 dwelling units per acre, which would yield about 264. So what we're proposing is actually quite a bit less, which would be 480 multifamily units and then 125 townhomes. And open space requirement is 30%. Roughly with the layout that we currently have, we're looking at, let's call it 50% open space. So this is the concept design. I don't know if this will work. There, no, it's gonna fade out. But anyway, so yeah, so the areas in green to the bottom left would be the townhomes that are fee simple. So we're kind of keeping those areas off to one side, and we kind of took the kind of the holistic approach where we're going to keep the pods kind of uniform for a consistency. So in that lower quad, that left-turn quad, those are the fee simple townhomes. To the right of that would be the townhomes that will be rental units. Just north of that would be the common clubhouse area. And you could see there's areas there for, recreation, some basketball courts. There's a lot of amenities which are included, which will be included as part of this PRD. We move over to the right, that'll be one of the apartment complexes. As we move plan north, that area there is reserved for future commercial development. And as we move plan left of that, that's the bigger apartment pod, as we call it. So ultimately we're going to have a main thoroughfare coming through the PRD and then a spur coming out to access Shiloh Road. You can see the areas outlined in yellow. We have those as kind of like, I guess, amenity areas, whether it be dog parks or like community, activation areas, kind of basically communal gathering, locations. The areas in blue are our anticipated stormwater management areas. And we kind of chose those locations based on the existing topography, kind of the low areas of the property. And granted, we will completely work through that on the tentative design and the final plan. This area, part of this development, is in the wellhead protection zone, which is the 1,200-foot arc there. And for any stormwater management areas in that zone, those basins will have to be lined. And throughout the development, kind of the main theme that we're trying to achieve here is, incorporate activity. So we have walking paths throughout the development. We have interlinked areas to get from one pod to the next. I think when we were here Monday or Tuesday night with the Planning Commission, they had a lot of great suggestions. So we're going to take those to heart. Where we can make further connections from the clubhouse area up to one of the commercial area. And then also one of the other suggestions was, as you're entering one of the pods, maybe have a little larger kind of paved concrete area, maybe with some nice landscaping. It's a welcoming into that particular pod or that section. So that's our concept design. We gave it a lot of thought. I personally think it's a well thought out layout. I really am ecstatic about the layout. I think the comments that we received from the Planning Commission, it was well received. So that was very, very encouraging. So some building concepts, and these are apartment complexes that Burkentine is either doing now or has done in the past. So you can see the general layout model. So, yeah, just more apartment complexes. And one of the themes here that we're trying to propose is rear-loaded townhomes. So basically, all of the garages and the rear entranceways would be at the back of the unit. So those can be accessed via, whether it be alleyways or a smaller parking lots. And they're gonna be kind of front-facing, so whether it's gonna be front-facing another unit with a common kind of aisle walkway area, but the premise here is to keep the units rear-loaded. And again, here's some, additional pictures of some rear-loaded townhomes. And as far as the clubhouse goes, yeah, there's no set design, but this is one of the clubhouses that they have, that Burkentine has done in the past. So you could see the general architecture of that. Looks like, for me, it's a beautiful concept, like the roof lines on it. So yeah, that's gonna be the general style. As far as transportation goes, yeah, we understand we will have to meet with CATA. Likely have to propose some bus, loading, unloading areas. So that's one thing that as the process moves forward, we will undertake that. And pedestrian and bicycle accommodations. Yeah, again, we're gonna have multiple, mixed-use paths throughout the development, hiking, walking, biking. And then, so along with that, that's gonna promote a lot of activity within the PRD. And a summary of the parking facilities. So each pod or each lot will have its own adequate parking area. And project timeline, for phase one, proposed construction start time would be summer of 2025. Again, that's depending on permits and everything else. And completion in fall of 2027. Phase two would be start of fall of 2027 and completion approximately fall of 2030. And major roadway construction project, because of the phasing of the first phase, will access via Pleasant Point Drive. So that's going to be the smaller phase of the complex. And then as we work through the HOP process to access Shiloh Road, that'll become part of phase two, and that'll be our kind of bridge out to Shiloh Road. And I think that's it for the PowerPoint. So certainly entertain any questions.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Eric, you ready?
I am.
Okay.
I took the time today to watch the Planning Commission meeting, and you didn't know that you'd have so many experts on the Planning Commission.
Well, that was good to know.
John knew. Yeah. And many, not just aesthetics, but selling strategies. I mean, it ran the gamut.
Yeah.
There was some concern about access to the dog park. We don't need to go there, though, whether it was public or not. But a couple of things that, watching that answered, obviously the Catabus question, and you mentioned at the meeting that you're a bike ped enthusiast, so that that would be weaved in. Those accommodations would be weaved into this when we saw a plan, which was encouraging. The only suggestion I would have is to keep in mind access, off-site access, ways to connect with potentially the bike paths that we have through Pleasant Point and along Independence, just so that there's at best connecting to the Dale Summit area from the site. Very good layout internally.
Thank you.
And then four things that I didn't see that came up. Oh, by the way, isn't it great when a developer stands in front of us and presents a concept with rear-loaded townhomes? You know, instead of us pushing that on folks, does that mean the market is warmed up to that, and now that's...
You'd have to ask Mr. Flemminger there from a Burkentine,
So
but I
that's
suppose it has.
Because that used to be something planners had to really, we need to do more of this. That's great. So four things. First, and I got to ask this, it's kind of an awkward question, but we did do the, Lindsay showed us the PRD, gave us a little education on PRD. We don't often get them. It's been a while since we've had one. What is it from a developer standpoint that makes you want to develop this as a PRD? You showed us that you're not exceeding the underlying zoning requirements for density and a bunch of other stuff. Normally we see a PRD plan because you want to rearrange density because of topography or stormwater or challenges on site. Is there anything you can share with us that has encouraged you to approach this as a PRD?
Yeah, I don't know if you want to take that one, Matt.
Because it is kind of leads into then some of the follow-up questions.
Matt Flickinger, Vice President of Land Acquisitions for Burkentine Group. And your question was, why are we doing a PRD?
Yeah, we don't oftentimes get developers pushing the PRD concept or initiating that. We tend to like it because it gives both parties a lot of flexibility. Is there one or two particular aspects or challenges to this site that make a PRD a more attractive approach from your standpoint?
No. So, we're in 6 states currently, and really we found that the PRD process has worked well for us. And so we're trying not to deviate from that if we can. It makes it more of an ease through permitting and working with the townships to try to see what the township's looking for, as well as what we want to do with it, what is that community feel with most of our projects. We don't want to come in and just maximize density and make something that isn't attractive and doesn't function well. We want to make something that everybody can enjoy who lives there, as well as the township can be.
I don't know that I could have asked for a better answer than that. That's great to hear. And what I think I'm hearing is we're dealing with someone who is used to working in a PRD type environment, because that can sometimes be intimidating to developers who haven't done it before. And you have been through a similar process?
Yes.
Okay. So you trust the process, working together. Good. The second thing is, maybe a question for staff. I know public-private streets all have to be built to the same spec, but is it the intent here to build these streets the 2 primary roads, and I didn't hear this at Planning Commission, 2 public street standards so they can be turned over as public streets, or are they going to remain driveways?
So, yeah, so the main thoroughfare and the road coming out to Shiloh will be to township standards and then turned over. Everything internally will be
Okay.
remain private.
So the north-south route and then the connection out to Shiloh, the intent is to make them public streets? Okay. Of course, then, we're eventually going to hit the wall with Shiloh Road, and, we'll have to deal with that at some point. The third thing, the third thing would be, one thing I didn't hear at Planning Commission was, what is the requirement from PRD when it comes to parkland? Is there a requirement to dedicate space or fee and lieu? Is it all the same options that we have if they were developing it under traditional?
Yes.
Yeah, they don't change.
Yeah.
They're the
So,
same.
so what of this open space would count as parkland, or is the plan then that's all kind of private space, or what does staff interpret this?
The walking paths, all the open areas are open space, and I believe this has been designed to meet the open space requirements.
Okay, so this, if it's designed and built out like this, would not require any additional dedication of parkland or fee and lieu?
No.
No. As they mentioned, the requirement is 30, and they're proposing 50.
Okay. And then, that kind of begs the question that came up in Planning Commission as far as, is the space open to folks who don't live there?
Right.
If it's counting as parkland, it's counting as open space, is it the intent? And I heard a little bit about this at Planning Commission, but I just want a clarification on the record then. If we're going down that road, is the intent that some of that open space will not be restricted to off-site guests?
I think the intention, I think the question that was asked of myself at Planning Commission was dog park. Would the dog park be open to the public? I would imagine we would say yes to that. You know, it's hard to police a dog park in a community. I mean, if someone pulls up and takes their dog in, I've seen it in numerous ones we've done. You know, the walking path is open. You know, we're not going to gate that off and have people with badges making sure that you're a resident. The clubhouse would be HOA maintained. That obviously would need a membership requirement to come in and out of the clubhouse, which would be your resident ID that you would be.
So if somebody wanders up from Pleasant Point with a wiffle ball and bat and is out hitting the ball around in the open space.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to restrict that at the moment. I don't think that's the intention. But, you know, there are spaces there where, you know, obviously pickleball for us has been a big growing need in every community we're doing. You know, you run into those issues with an HOA where they start to require that be selected as for residents only because they want to get on and play pickleball, and you have public pulling up and using it. So, I mean, that works through with our HOA bylaws when we start to get into that. But I would say along those lines, yes, possibly. I know that's a little vague of an answer.
Okay. Well, I know that that's almost not relevant here, but because it's such a large plot, it normally under normal, if you were developing it not as a PRD, that this would be a robust discussion that we would have, not only where it's located, you know, and we might even be entering into the discussion for fee and lieu. So wanted to get that clear. But that's a good segue to my last question regarding HOAs, because that also came up at Planning Commission. And this is more a combination question for staff. The HOA then will maintain, I heard that the rentals will have their own kind of HOA subgroup that will represent HOA interests. What are the common grounds that HOA in this would maintain, would be responsible for maintaining?
So anywhere around what would be the apartments and the townhouses.
Any of the open spaces?
Correct. And for now, you would have obviously the open space of the commercial. If that is not built out, we'd maintain that, make sure that it's not an unsightly dirt pile. You know, around the clubhouse and all that, that would be manicured by the maintenance team. Every community that we do, we have a maintenance team that works underneath the HOA. So the HOA has that maintenance team that goes around, maintains mows, trash pickup. They work through the items with snow plowing. You know, the question was asked about speed reduction there, and I had mentioned we're a big fan of speed bumps. We do removable speed bumps, so in the wintertime, the plows don't tear them up. You have the maintenance team pull them in the fall, put them down in the spring. It works pretty well.
Okay, and the bike paths?
Bike paths during the winter, I would have to look into that. I don't know that we would plow
And
them.
again,
So to speak.
the reason for the question is, again, it's cleaner when it's not HOA for us, because you're dedicating land to the township, the maintenance is known, you know, those kinds of things. HOAs have a finite lifespan, 20, 25, maybe 30 years, something like that. And then after that, sometimes they just kind of go away, and then those things are left undone, we'll say. And then folks are knocking at the door here wanting to know what we're going to do about it. So I just want to make sure we as a group understand the bigger the property, the bigger the HOA responsibilities, the more that could fall to us eventually and it all sounds good at the beginning. But we've been around long enough that 25, 30 years goes along and, you know, we got a stormwater detention pound, the HOA is no longer maintaining. So that's not really a comment on a plan, it's just a heads up so that when it comes back around as a land development plan, we're all, you know, fully aware of what we're getting into. But if this is comments for sketch plan, I don't have anything really on the design other than those little heads up comments.
Okay. All right, I'll go next. So my first question is, so the paths I'm seeing, are those bike paths or those sidewalks?
So the bike paths is that grayish shade color,
Okay.
kind of meandering through the development. We have sidewalk proposed along the main thoroughfare roadways, so.
Okay, so that white path is a sidewalk on the main thoroughfare? Right along it?
This entrance,
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
and
cool.
that's what you would say is, that gray is the wall.
And so, yeah, on the main thoroughfare that's eventually gonna come off of Shiloh, so they, just to make sure, right, they all have sidewalks and it's on both sides?
That's our proposal.
Right, yeah, and so both roads that were gonna be dedicated to the township eventually would have sidewalks on both sides. Okay, I wanted to clarify that. Is there any sidewalks along Shiloh Road on the property?
Along,
Or that's
parallel
that bike path, right?
yeah, right in this area.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, we haven't looked at that specifically because that's gonna involve a whole HOP and what that intersection ultimately looks like. We'll kind of remain to be seen, but yeah, so I think as we move through the design process, we'll be able to determine, what the extent of any sidewalk there may be.
okay. But there is the shared use path, right? It's not exclusive to bikes, but it's still a path that would take you basically from bottom to top as we're looking along Shiloh if you needed to. Yeah, and I really liked your narrative, right? You had mentioned the access to Spring Creek Canyon, right? Noting the fact that this is one small stretch along Shiloh, right? But to eventually, right, get something out to Spring Creek Canyon where you don't have to, risk your life to go biking from there to there, right? I mean, I like that connection, right? And thinking about that connection, in the future. The only thing I would add, with Shiloh, and it's in consideration, I think you guys are well aware, right, in the Dale Summit area that we're looking at form-based code, right? So, this is very intriguing to me, right, individually. I'm like, this is awesome, right? It kind of gets to that. And I really love the rear-loaded townhomes and things like that. But I didn't know if you guys considered, something that would kind of bring some street value to Shiloh at all, in this project. The kind, that, form-based code sort of brings to it, right? Because we are looking at, eventually across the road, right, there is further development happening at the Maxwell property too, right? So if there's something that, can be along those lines where you get a little bit of, street value or curbside appeal, right, by driving down Shiloh, that would be kind of cool. And I do recognize too, your ponds there, the bigger ones, you have recreation areas, right? So those aren't gonna be those beautiful retention ponds that have fences around them that you can't actually go
They're
into.
gonna be relatively shallow.
Yeah.
So but until we start running the numbers, I mean, that's our premise right now is to make them shallow, make them active recreation zones.
Okay,
But hopefully, I mean, as we start running numbers and start determining what we need for volume control and everything, but that's our mode kind of moving forward. That's what our forward thoughts are.
yeah. Now, does that actually count towards the open space?
They
Yeah.
can.
Right, if they don't limit access to it, right? Yeah, because it wouldn't necessarily be open space if there's a big fence
When you say
around it.
limit, not put a fence around.
Yeah, so think about it, right, you've been to the Hershey Lodge, right?
Yeah.
That beautiful retention pond is right out front that nobody can go up to the side of it because it's got a gigantic fence around the entire thing, yeah? And, you see that pretty often, right, in development, so, yeah, so I mean, I really like the idea of not, barring the access to it, right? So that's great. And then the trees and vegetation, I would just encourage to try to place some more trees and maybe, just for the lack of the planning in the sketch, but, throughout, there's, instead of just, lines of trees along the street and lines of trees along the border, maybe, get some trees in there in some of those open areas.
Yeah, and I think one of the planning commission members had mentioned that little extra, area as you're entering a PUD, have some, vegetation there, have some nice landscaping.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as we move through the design process, we'll certainly look at that and try to incorporate that, that extra landscaping in those areas.
Okay, that's all I had, thanks. Susan?
Thank you very much, and I appreciate all the comments council has made, and your narrative was very helpful. I had some technical questions, and one of them is, I'm interested in how you decided on the number of units. So we have, you have, I think, 45 acres, and you're looking at 480 units for the multifamily, 125. Why a lower number when you could you could develop more units.
Yeah, I think, we took an approach on that, obviously, the more parking lots, the more impervious, the more stormwater runoff. I mean, I think the intention here is not to do maximum build out. I mean, I think ultimately, as I mentioned prior, we are stewards. We are stewards of the land, so don't make it crazy with just, blacktopping everything. Have a lot more open spaces, keep the densities within reason. So I think that's how we approach the layout. And then guidance from what the desires of the development team, what they were looking for is what would their yield prefer to be.
And then on the rear loading, so I have some images in my head. My daughter lives in Tower Grove, St. Louis, and it's an area that was developed in the city back in the late 19th century, early 20th century. And so the rear loading, the units for the rear loading, the buildings are fronting onto the street. And the rear loading includes alleys behind and then the rear loading. This doesn't look like that. This looks more like the rear loading. It's almost like the front of the house has sort of been flipped around and it's facing sidewalks and walkways. So I'm thinking from, say, for example, if this is not to your point, Eric, about the township specifications on the road, so there won't be side of the street parking, so residents might have friends coming over. Where do they go, and how does that sort of flow around? Because in that sense, looking back at Tower Grove, it doesn't look as rear loaded as Tower Grove does.
Yeah, so I think we took the approach, I mean, if we have the alleyways in the back and having main streets in the front, I mean, I think holistically, that's adding a lot more impervious cover, a lot more blacktop. So I think by having the rear loading and parking areas kind of around the back part, and we have other parking areas kind of spread out through that, I guess that lower left quad.
That's what I saw.
Yeah, so you could see we kind of spread apart the parking areas, but I think having that, and this may give it more of a communal feeling, having the units face one another with an internal walkway that may bring some more kind of communal gathering spaces.
Yeah, I'm thinking about walkability for the general public as well. So that's where the sort of HOA feel, and this is more private property versus public property, people walking along streets and so that kind of thing. And also that would have impact on residents that might buy, in particular the fee simple units. They might have 2 or more vehicles, so they'll be parking vehicles in these other parking spaces, which would again limit parking spaces for people coming from outside to socialize with residents. So I live in a neighborhood that had, we're not quite there. We don't have side of the street parking, and it's become a real issue. So I'm sensitive to that based on my own experience.
If I may, I did, as one question I did ask, right, that I forgot to ask about that is, if there is something where like, oh, we're gonna leave some of these dog parks and things open to the public, if one
Where are they
were
gonna
to,
park?
right, I mean, hopefully we encourage people to bike there, but if one were to drive their car there, right, are there going to be, some side outs, right, on the street? Not to make more impervious, but just a few parallel parking or something like that.
Yeah, when we looked at the parking requirements, I don't know exactly what they are for in the detail, but I know there was a supplemental, like you had to add extra parking based on your number of the units and over X amount of a unit. So, yeah, so I think we took that, and then so the amount of parking that we have definitely beats what the requirements are, and probably a little on the greater side of that, at least for the apartments. So yeah, so I think we'd have adequate parking, and at least the parking lot, or the parking lots in the larger apartment complex where that large stormwater management area is. I mean, that is a pretty expansive parking lot. So that could be areas there for, the public to park if they're gonna access that dog park.
It's a little bit of a walk.
Yeah, I meant this one, right here. If you were accessing this
I see.
larger dog
I see.
park.
But you are proposing on-street parking?
Yes, on the west side
Yeah,
of Pleasant
yeah,
Point
so we have
Drive.
on-street
Yeah.
Yes,
parking,
on-street parking, on the
along
public
the main
streets.
thoroughfare
Okay.
as well.
Okay, that's helpful.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to tease out there.
Okay,
Thanks,
that
Dave.
sounds great. Yeah, I guess the only other question I had was based more on the experience. Maybe that's a question for you, Matt, since you've done this in other areas. So you definitely have an interesting combination of something that will potentially fall under an HOA and then public use in public spaces. What's been your experience in your other developments and your other PRDs in other states? Do you see that there are conflicts with the HOA residents who have a problem with the public coming on site using dog parks? How does that work out?
You know, we haven't. It seems as though the renters are transient. And I say transient in the way that they might rent for a year and then they're gone, so they're not vested into that HOA as much as we see with residents that either own or live in the apartments. So it doesn't seem to be a cumbersome issue that we found in other communities as much. They realize they have access to it, they go and use it and enjoy it. It doesn't seem to be as big a conflict as you would imagine. So we've run into issues where, you know, you always have at least one resident that's unhappy that they couldn't get on the piece of workout equipment, you know, and there's a renter there that might be there, and you're working through that, and you don't know. You just know that that person's in the community, so hopefully I answered your question.
I think so. I think for a start. And I think your point was, I didn't realize that in 30 years, these streets, these facilities will become township. We won't be here in 30 years,
They
but.
won't necessarily become township, but people will be looking to us to resolve the issue. And, we don't have to, but, you know.
It's a tough one. Then it sort of becomes a no man's land. And then who is responsible for that? I guess, have we ever dealt with that, the HOAs that have aged out?
Well, we had an issue at Penn Hills with the stormwater detention pond, and we don't need to, we can talk.
We can hash it out some other time, yeah.
But yeah, it's come up a couple of times since I've been on this board.
Wow.
And there's a few more that are gonna age out in the very near future here too.
There's a lot coming right to that age right now, yeah.
So that's something to think about.
And this is not a reflection on your plan.
No.
It's just something that we need to be aware of and be prepared for if this is the approach you're gonna take. And can I ask another quick question, just to follow up?
Sure.
I asked about the public streets. Is the Pleasant Point connection through to Trout Road also a public street?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I assumed that, but.
Does that currently have on-street parking?
No.
And then, may I ask one more question?
Yeah.
Mr. Hoffman made a comment about the top left, the apartments and the, I watched the planning commission too. And so that's the next phase, that's phase 2, correct? So that's really, am I understanding that what's there is really just basically there as a placeholder until you get into more design work that you'll bring back to us? Correct. Okay.
He didn't like them.
Oh, no.
All right, any other additional questions? Comments from staff? Gentlemen, anything further?
No, we just thank everyone for the comments.
Since Doug was here, I don't know, were you anticipating traffic questions? Because I wanted to make note for anybody who's paying attention that we're not asking any, because the traffic study needs to be done. There needs to be discussion with PennDOT and HOP, and that's going to dictate a lot of what happens out on Shiloh. So just for the record, we're not ignoring that. You know, that is going to, those discussions will take place at the appropriate time when the data is gathered and.
I just had asked Doug to join us just
Okay.
to be here.
We weren't ignoring them, it's just that, what's the point? There's not a lot of point in having that discussion now until we have traffic study.
He's probably fine with not having to talk.
I do have one last question.
Yeah,
It's just for
please.
staff. This is what we approve through conditional use, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, so it'll be a
Just so we're mindful
PRD
of
and
that.
a conditional use.
right.
Hang on.
All right, okay.
Just a reminder to us.
I think we're good, guys, thank you.
Okay, all right, well, thank everyone for their time.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to reports. Manager's report.
Yeah, so just a couple things to highlight under the manager's report. in terms of Dale Summit and the ongoing work with form-based code. We're going to be talking about that here under B1. PC had some questions on the remand letter, so we'll have the opportunity to have that discussion. Solar power purchasing agreement. Right now, the contracts are anticipated either sometime this month or in July. The next working group meeting is set for the 24th. That's tentatively. It was kind of dependent on when those contracts hit. So if they've landed on the desk, we'll have the meeting. If not, it may get pushed, but just as an FYI. Path to campus. Happy to report that on the 31st, we had our kickoff meeting for the Transportation Alternative Set-Aside Grant, where we had an opportunity to go out with PennDOT and walk the site and take a look at what's out there, talk through some of the grant requirements. Currently, the schedule that we have is looking at construction in 26. So later this year and a good chunk of next year would be pre-construction design work to kind of clear the path for the construction of the path. The likely next step will be working on a RFP for design consultant selection in terms of that process. That's something that Dawn and I will be coordinating on here over the next couple of weeks to get that moving. Last thing I wanted to touch on was, again, the attainable workforce housing ordinance. The second remand letter was forwarded to PC, and they had an opportunity to look at it at their meeting on Tuesday night. And I'm not going to steal Matt's thunder. I'm guessing he'll have some points to touch on in regards to that. So that's all I have for tonight.
Okay. Any questions for the assistant manager? Yes.
Assistant Manager Bloom, the year and a half at least that we're anticipating between now and start of construction, is there any land acquisition needed?
Chances are yes. We're going to have to go through, Penn State has a lot of holdings. There are some individual private holdings through there. So would be maybe some land acquisition easements, those kind of things to get the path kind of laid out there. So yeah, it's not an easy corridor to work in. There are some challenges, as we noted throughout the discussion of this. There's some issues there, but nothing insurmountable. But yes.
So the year and a half, does that build in any margin for error on the land acquisition, or is that a minimum it's going to take just for those things outside of anything that would be held up with?
Yeah, right now that's just a tentative schedule. We'll kind of see what we get into as we start moving forward. Dawn and I feel pretty confident about where the schedule is at this moment, but you don't know until you kind of hit the ground running. So.
And that assumes you feel pretty confident there are no looming issues with land acquisition that could really hold this up?
No, I mean, so the early discussions with Penn State, and working through its real estate process and even through the Board of Trustees, I think helped lay some groundwork
okay, good.
For that.
That's my biggest
process.
concern is the wheels of turning.
Yeah, we have continued our dialogue with Penn State, in particular Steve Watson and Neil Sullivan, and certainly we'll ask them to help us, as well as Julian from local government, to help us kind of walk through that step. But we, as part of the grant submission initially, we had to go through the process for real estate, and it did go the whole way to the Board of Trustees.
That's good to hear.
Susan, anything?
I did not attend the,
All right, well, yeah, let's go ahead and move into College Regional
sorry.
County Liaison.
Don't you-
Go ahead,
I'm
Susan.
ready, I'm ready.
Yeah, good.
So I did not attend the CTIDA, and I have not yet had a chance to talk with the executive director on anything that she would like to bring back. When she's back in the office, I'll talk with her and I'll share that, and that can be added next meeting. I attended the annual meeting of the Public Safety Committee with it was an emergency medical services update. I have a detailed report that's included in the packet. We did meet this year for the first time with the commissioners. Concepcion and Higgins came to that meeting to hear the report from the emergency services provider, and we actually met at Center Lifelink so that we could get a tour of Center Lifelink. I think the big takeaways, though, for council on this, We're doing less, Center Lifelink has been doing fewer mutual aid calls, and that's because our rural communities that have had problems staffing their EMS services are getting back on track, and so that's been working out better. But one of the important points that I think we've talked about here, particularly with Center Lifelink, because they cover the region, they do not receive any funding from COG, and they are dependent on reimbursement from insurance companies, which is getting harder and harder to get, and also membership. So they've again asked that the township support the membership campaign. They get about a 14% return on 36,000 brochures that go out. So it's worth another mention, and I think we've talked about adding a link on the township website to support that. And then also consideration of making, during budget season, whether we would make some sort of, contribution to Center Lifelink. So,
Okay.
other than that.
Yeah, I'll just put a plug in for the executive director, for the search committee, executive director of the COG. There should be a link, I don't know, I didn't check my email, but there should be a link coming out to go ahead and watch the presentation. So if you haven't had a
It's
chance, yeah, go ahead and check it out. And then you can see. But that's all I have, Eric.
2 meetings. First one was earlier this week on Tuesday. That was Facilities Committee on Tuesday morning, and I sent out a written report outlining the 2 agenda items. I just want to make I just want to emphasize the second agenda item discussion we had, and that had to do with, what it really had to do with was we can no longer defer the maintenance of the COG parking lot unless we want to spend a lot more money. And there's a lesson there. I mean, almost every organization does this stuff. They defer asset maintenance because you're down to the wire, you need to balance the budget. Just push it off another year. Well, it's been pushed off for a couple of years. And as you can see from the borough's engineering consultant, we push it off another year and we're going to be spending a lot more money. So Rich and I are on board with that. And I think we're the 2 that are going to be most involved in those discussions when it comes to balancing the budget. But just a heads up on that one. The second meeting was earlier today, was our Lucy meeting, and that was only one agenda item, and that was all, that was a long discussion on finalizing the survey for the comp plan that will be going out in the next couple of weeks. Possibly we'll get a written report out on that, but that's really all it's going to say, is that we spent a lot of time putting the finishing touches, I hope, on a survey that'll be going out in the public to support the update of the comp plan.
Okay. All right. PC.
Okay, we've actually had 2 meetings since the last time I've been here. We had the soccer plan that we recommended. We had the middle school plan that we also recommended. Last night, Tuesday night, we heard from the Center Region Planning Agency Comprehensive Plan Update by Mike Tilko. We also heard the PRD from Lindsay. We talked a little bit about the form-based code in Dale Summit. Per Lindsay's memo on 531, we're going to get some of the definition. I think there's 5 questions to be answered towards the end of June. So we decided to table that. Next came the workforce attainable housing second remand. I'm going to pull out a couple things from the original remand on the 11/16/23. Objective 4 says incentives should be altered given the ordinance inclusionary nature and goal to ensure that neighborhoods remain equitable in terms of basic amenities. That was a point of discussion last night. Intent of statement number 1, recognize the importance of socioeconomic diversity in nurturing more inclusive and dynamic neighborhoods. And out of the recommended process number 3, conduct a detailed review of the continuum of affordable housing to fully understand the distinction between affordable, attainable, and workforce housing. We sort of looked through all that stuff. The word, I guess the latest remand is attainable. The biggest thing between remand letter number 1 and 2 is we had the community development folks step in. We looked at the matrix and pretty much went down the list Tuesday night. And, you know, we're column number 1, column number 2 is the community, column number 3, I believe, is the council. And we're sort of asking that column number 2, column number 4, and column number 5 to help us with some clarity and some definitions, you know, be made into one column. A lot of the definitions we're sort of questioning with the new remand letter, going from waiver of fees, fee in lieu, all those things. We're sort of asking for maybe a more clear, you know, definition of those things with the second remand. After all that, even Tuesday night, there's pretty much a consensus on the Planning Commission that what you asked us to do back in November, we think we did pretty well, okay? I pulled 2 quotes from the community development folks that said what they said on Tuesday night. The gentleman number 1 said, it's a take and give. If none of this gets built, it doesn't help anyone. If it gets to the point when it is unattainable to the developer, we won't build it. That's a quote. The second thing he said, if we're building high-end townhomes, 480 to 490, understood K, it might not make sense to have attainable housing. Better to pay fee in lieu. You know, sort of, that gets around the point of why we're trying to get attainable housing, affordable housing, workforce housing in the first place. You know, I understand, I work for a company, I'm retired from a company that's a market cap is $77 billion. You know, their revenue last year was $360 billion, which if you do the math, comes out to $1 billion a day. So I think we have a good understanding of the business. Hearing from the Burkentine people, they failed to mention that the 814 crew was named after, there's 3 sons of the Burkentine folks, and they're all Penn State grads, and one of them, I think his name was Cruz, so they sort of have a sort of tie to Penn State. The second presentation, or second talk from the community developers, you know, first, the Burkentine people were like, sports analogy, we're here to play ball. We want to play ball with you guys. The second group, the community developers, said, if you don't like what we're doing, we're going to take the ball and go home. And I think maybe that goes around the whole premise that we're trying to get for attainable housing. And I'm open to any questions.
Questions?
I appreciate your report, and I appreciate the comments that you've made and the concerns that the PC has brought forward with the difference between the remand that we sent you the first time and the one that's coming back to you. And so, thank you.
And last but not least, there's a rumor going around that Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift are going to purchase some land here in College Township. I don't know, Lindsay, have you heard anything different? No, okay.
Oh, different, no.
No, okay, different. But I guess after Tuesday night's PC meeting, they're looking at some property over in Ferguson Township.
Mike, I didn't know if you had, I saw you writing some notes on the request.
No, one of the things that, very similar kind of process that we just are going to go through under OB1, that back and forth dialogue I think is important. You know, we're moving into some pretty complex stuff here. Attainable housing is obviously something that not only College Township or the Center Region or the state or the nationwide, we're having trouble cracking. So I think the power of this back and forth is going to be really important between the Planning Commission and Council. So, you know, in that vein, one of the things that I would probably look to Planning Commission as you continue their discussion of attainable is those places where you need that clarity, don't hesitate to bring those back in the form of a memo and ask for that. I know what we provided to you in the remand letter, there were inconsistencies. And that, I think, is a reflection of the complexity of the topic. So I guess my mission to staff and Matt, as the representative here from Planning Commission, is find those inconsistencies and push this body to clarify. And that's what you're alluding to, Matt, is there's some things there that you just need kind of nailed down so that you have a clear understanding of what the mission is, and then you can start trying to achieve it. So, but no, I appreciate the feedback from PC, and like I said, this back and forth dialogue, as we kind of alluded to at the last meeting, is kind of what we anticipated, and honestly, what we're doing with attainable housing is just going to lay the groundwork for what you're going to do with form-based too, back and forth. So.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we said that tonight, we can't let, perfect be the enemy of good. We had to get started somewhere.
Yeah.
We couldn't hold the whole process up until we had it all sewed up, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think it harkens back to our special meeting that we had, the past one with, the PC, and the fact that, working together on things,
Yeah.
and gaining clarification, right? Not expectations, unreal expectations of just, getting it right the first time, right, as soon as something comes across, right? So, okay. DEI, did staff have anything else? Okay, DEIB. What do we got?
Just a few things to highlight in terms of this is the first meeting of the month, so I like to try to highlight the acknowledgements during the month. We are National Caribbean American Heritage Month, Immigrant Heritage Month. We obviously highlighted Pride Month here at the beginning of the meeting, and did want to call to attention, because it'll fall before our next meeting, Juneteenth, which falls on Wednesday, June 19th. That's all I have for today.
Okay, I'll move on to consent agenda. Tonight's consent agenda consists of the following. CA1 is our minutes and approval of the May 16, 2024 regular meeting. CA2 has the following correspondence. A is an email from Daniel Materna dated May 19th regarding the casino. B is a letter from the State College Borough Manager dated May 13, 2024 regarding pickleball comments. And C is an email from Ethan Dean dated June 3rd, 24 regarding CATA service and transportation in the center region. CA3 consists of the following. A is a contract number 24-05, inspection and video documentation of storm pipe awarded to Insight Pipe Contracting, LLC, for a total bid amount of $45,255. College Township's share is $34,298.75. B is an amendment to the SPLO Center Region Library Articles of Agreement dated June 1st, 2024, and C is agreement HRI Inc. to perform the work of the Pike Street Phase 3. Do any members of council wish to pull any of these items?
Yeah, CA2C.
CA2C will pull. All right, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda minus CA2C?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. None opposed, the motion carries. Let's talk about CA2C.
Well, I just wanted to, I had a few comments because for the last 25 years of my day job, I was tasked with responding to these type of emails that were directed to CATA. And just, I think it goes without saying that Mr. Dean is preaching to the choir here when it comes to support for public transportation. And secondly, he's also correct about the death spiral. I mean, that's standard in the transit industry, that when you start cutting service and raising fares, you get less people, and then it's, you end up in the death spiral. But lastly, I'm kind of curious why it appears that this was only sent to College Township and the borough. I'm just kind of, I wonder if that was just unintentional, or it wasn't sent to the other municipalities. But the reason is that, the reason I bring it up is that local funding, College Township share, the borough share, is a very, very small percentage of the operating budget. If you read later on in the staff informative, you'll see in CATA's report that roughly $7 million of their operating budget comes from fares, and well over $10 million comes from the state and federal subsidies. The local share of all the municipalities together is less than $1 million. So the point is that even if the municipalities could double that, you're not going to leverage, double the service. It's basically, the municipalities are paying about 5 or 6 cents on the dollar. So even if municipalities could afford to double or even triple their local share, it's really not going to buy you that much more service. The big players here are the state and federal subsidy. And if you look into that report, you can see that the executive director of CATA had noted that federal subsidy for next year is projected to be less, 3 or 4% less. And 3 or 4% less of $7 million is a lot more, is a lot bigger chunk, than the municipalities could even muster together to cover. So the issue really lies at the federal and state level when it comes to supporting, public transportation. And lastly, I'll just say that if you read that, you noted the reason why the subsidy was going down had to do with the adjustments made after the 2020 census, which we all recognize as being flawed because of COVID and students and that. And therein points one of the biggest flaws in the federal and state subsidy formulas, which is, as I noted, a very big chunk of CATA's budget, is it's population-based and not use-based. And I'll just end this with an example of that. This is an area of approximately 100,000 people, and the funding is dictated based on that, even though, in CATA's case, it has the 3rd most riders of any transit system in the state, behind only Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. But it gets a small fraction of the state funding because the population of the center region is a very small percentage of the total population of the state of Pennsylvania. So just passing along some of the information that I spent writing for 25 years in response to many of these. So I think in our role, the best thing we can do is continue to encourage and remind our representatives at the state and federal level the value this community places on public transportation and the need for equitable and fair funding amounts, preferably not based on population, but more based on usage and efficiency, because that would greatly benefit the center region. So that's my soapbox. I'll get down off of it. The letter gave me an opportunity to get up on it.
I did not share the location of the picture. He did send it, and I meant to put it in the packet, but if you were wondering where the picture was taken.
Oh, no, they were in, it was in the packet.
Oh, was it? Okay. I wasn't sure if, I couldn't find it.
I couldn't figure out the location.
Well,
so-
there it is.
That map, that dot was in my packet.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I don't remember seeing that either. Fox Hollow Road at Orchard Road.
I was addressing mainly the philosophical issues regarding
Yeah, but I just
funding.
wanted to make sure you knew that.
I was hoping you pulled that.
Okay.
I was.
Okay.
I thought, I hope he pulls that.
Yeah.
Do we have a motion to accept CA2C?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Moving on to old business. OB1 is form-based code questions, clarifications from PC.
Okay, thank you. So back on May 7th, the Planning Commission reviewed the remand that council prepared regarding form-based code and that zoning code update in Dale Summit. The Planning Commission, as per their usual practice, reviewed the remand in detail and felt that, since there were some questions, it'd be best to get that clarity up front so it'll be easier to move forward. So the Planning Commission came up with 5 questions. And I did, a little looking into these, so if you have any you know, I'm here for guidance if you have any questions for me. But the Planning Commission is anticipating getting some comments back from council regarding, I'll just start. One is, how is a town center to be determined? Number two, and these all come from the intent statement, most of them.
Okay, I was gonna have to ask.
Yeah, which is actually included with the, because the remand is included with the packet. So how will civic buildings be controlled and monitored? How is the review process to be expedited? Explain who is responsible for administrative approval, and define good urbanism.
Okay, so the first question's under the intent statement, the community D, is that correct, where you first see town center?
Yes. And A actually talks about town centers too.
Okay, so it's under the
Yep.
community.
So, if I may,
Yeah,
we had the forward plan prepared back in 2018. And I believe in that plan that they called out an area around the Nittany Mall where a town center would be, you know, maybe appropriate. So I just wanted to bring that up. There are, you know, there's some literature out there about town centers, what they should be, you know, how they should look. And it's kind of interesting because we had this whole Burkentine conversation last night or tonight, and they kept talking about community and how they want to be, you know, more connected, and it just kind of put me in the thoughts of, you know, a town center-esque sort of development, missing that mixed use, of course, that's supposed to be integrated into that. So we're just looking forward to council's input.
okay. So comments, input for town center. And Matt, please feel free to step up if you want to add anything, please. Eric or Susan, or first?
I'll take a stab at
Town
it.
center. Any comments? If you don't have any comments.
No, I didn't. So I actually went back to the regulating plan that DPZ presented to us. That was a map that was given to us, and it showed, I think, 6 nodes that they identified as mixed-use centers. So I guess the question is, you know, we talk about the mission statement for Dale Summit area and developing a sense of place. Are we looking for one town center as the defining town center, which might be challenging to do given the development that's already in place there, versus looking at that regulating plan and looking at those nodes and defining the town center along the lines of the node? So, for example, the mall area is a node, and then Corning is a node. So would each of those, as we develop these areas, become separate, smaller town centers like the Burkentine development? You know, what I didn't see a town center, as much as I like the discussion around community, which I thought was great. There was no sort of central draw into, and I was thinking just of my own experience, Independence Place, where I lived for 3 years, it had a town center. It had the clubhouse, the pool, the you know, the tennis courts were there. So I guess the question is, are we trying to find a town center for the entirety of Dale Summit, which might almost be impossible, versus smaller defined town centers?
I think I could take a response to just add to your comment. Yeah, so, you know, what first struck me, right, without looking back, and I'm glad you brought that up because then it really did cue into it. I saw that we had town centers, right? It was plural, right, in the remand. So, yeah, I would be along the lines that it would be more coinciding with those nodes, right, in those areas as designated, and that there be multiple ones that should be somewhere in that general vicinity.
Yeah, I agree. I was going to say pretty much the same thing. I was also going to add in general, and this will cover many of the following questions. I don't see why we wouldn't consult with our consultant on some of these. That's what we've engaged them for. Maybe less so on the town centers one, but some of these other ones, like define good urbanism and how will civic buildings be controlled. I mean, we're not the experts. They are. We kind of put this together much like we did the attainable housing as a starting point. But now that we're to this level of detail, I don't think it's unreasonable, and I don't think it's outside the scope of our contract with them to engage them to help us with some of these questions.
And I think what I took out of, particularly with Marina's very broad, extensive, very good presentation, that the architectural elements of the buildings might unify those different nodes, so that as we develop those individual centers, I mean, I've seen form-based code development in Gaithersburg, Maryland, and there's sort of this colonial American type feel with brick facades and certain types of, architectural elements. Yeah. I don't know, I mean, we don't have an architectural review board in our community, and I don't know that we want to go to that level, but the two things that Marina talked about that.
DC can do that.
Okay. See, I'm learning every day. But I think really importantly, she made the point that we need to hold the line at the block structure. So the block structure drives what becomes the town center, drives traffic in and out of the town center, and then the concept of form would unify those different nodes. So that's just sort of.
But we're going to be developing this kind of piecemeal
Yes.
as opportunities come up.
Right.
So I think we have to accept the fact that maybe we stick with the idea that the mall area is the placeholder for town center, but we're going to have sub-town center.
Absolutely, but I think then the form really becomes the important unifying element. Otherwise, we're
yes.
just going to have Independence Place, we're going to have Burkentine, we're going to have lots of development up there with lots of small communities, but we're trying to unify the
Right.
community
And
as much as we
we're
can.
diligent with our interconnects and that, and 20 or 30 years, it'll all come together.
I mean, looking at the parking lots in the Burkentine, sketch plan, they did a good job, DPZ did, with showing us how that's part of the roadway from the Y at Benner Pike up to the intersection by Barnes and Noble, how you could take those 4 lanes and turn them into sort of, the center was planted. And so if you have even things such as, the elements of planting in the different areas, that would really unify and bring that sense of community, the broader community. So.
Okay, so based off of Eric's suggestion, are we saying maybe we should go back and get further clarification on 1, 2, and 5 from our,
Well, I think you could get suggestions from them on all of them.
Yeah.
Really.
Way I would frame it up is, your discussion here tonight, kind of looking at these individual questions, gives a general idea of where council sits, and then absolutely it can be refined with DPZ, and you're 100% correct. I think that's an overarching comment that would go into the response to Planning Commission. While council is providing this as some clarity, we're going to ask you to consult specifically with our consultant to say, okay, you hear what we're saying. Is that in line with what makes sense and works in terms of a form-based code?
okay. So it seems like we all have consensus on 1. Matt, you do have a
Well,
question.
I think what makes number 1 tough town center, when you go to number 5, define good urbanism, are we really even urban yet?
Right.
But I don't,
No, please.
I don't think good urbanism means being urban. I think that's a problem with that word.
It means characteristics.
It means community, really. And I looked up good urbanism and looked at all kinds of resources. You know what? It's not well defined.
Yeah.
And if you can't explain it to a 5-year-old, it's very difficult to explain it to us.
I look at bad urbanism.
Yeah, I went
What to do.
back to what is it, Suburban Nation, which is DPZ's original book that they wrote all those years ago when they started this movement, and they don't even define it. So I almost felt like the good urbanism question should have been the first question you asked, because all the other questions flow from, and I think the question is, how does College Township define good urbanism? We're looking for somebody to tell us what it is, but I think we have the latitude to define what our idea of good urbanism is based on these sort of more nebulous ideas that are in the literature.
All right, so we're skipping around, but we're going to go with it. So where is that in the remand letter, number 5?
It is in the.
Good urbanism comes back further.
Here,
I just want to see it in
it's under
context.
objections number 2.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, I think you're right on, Susan. I think urbanism, can be defined locally and how we all feel, and the Planning Commission Council feels what that good urbanism means to us, specific to Dale Summit. And if, you know, is it going back to those traditional roots? Is it, you know, just trying to define, you know, and just making a place and having it? I think there's a
Yeah, I
lot
mean,
to
yeah,
there.
the objective really kind of does say, you know, PC, you know, help us to define it, right? So, yeah.
One of the things that I would also add, and this is kind of an overarching comment, but it gets back to how does College Township specifically define some of these things? The Dale Summit Area Plan and that vision that was put together in the Dale Summit Area Plan hits on some of those high-level notes. So, you know, get back to your most basic core of, you know, establishing a community, something that has connectivity, has some human scale elements to it, that has those places for gathering, you know, those bases that led us to form-based code in and of itself. I think that kind of is your most basic definition of what College Township sees as good urbanism. And then, you know, when it comes to the actual building blocks and how that's implemented through a code, that's where DPZ comes in. You know, working with you collectively at PC to craft a recommendation on how do we achieve that vision piece that was framed up in the Dale Summit Area Plan.
I mean, that Dale Summit area, you know, vision statement says an attractive and instantly recognizable place within the context of the township, region, and county. And that, to me, comes back to that concept of block structure and the elements of how, so that becomes instantly recognizable. That was something that sort of, you know, has stuck in my head.
So if we could close the loop on the urbanism thing, I would agree 100% with what Mike said. In fact, that is what I had in my mind as, just me personally, as urbanism, is to extract out the qualities and characteristics that you have in an urban area in this setting, which is clearly not going to be urban. But those strategies and those elements are very desirable.
Yeah, we saw some basic principles of that tonight in what the folks from Burkentine provided. You know, it's not totally baked yet, and I think we all collectively recognize that, but they're moving closer to that.
And I would
Things that
throw
are
in some
interconnected.
mixed-use opportunities within the development too, on top of the ones you mentioned.
Multimodal, everything, right? Yeah, that's a good, does that give you something to chew on a little bit? Yeah. And staff will help you, obviously, you know, formulate these notes. Anything else on that one, Lindsay? If not, I mean, maybe we'll let Matt just ask which one he wants to go for next. No?
No, I'm gonna go to number 2 again.
All right. Who wants to talk specific buildings? You want to say something to it first?
Yeah, there are some regulations within the code, the draft code, that defines civic spaces, buildings, considering different, let's see here, parks, conservation parks, greenways, plazas, and regulations that are specific to those. So when they're controlled and monitored, that can be partly done through the new code.
I mean, I think the other thing too, DPZ's made the point in some of what they've written that the most important civic building in any area is the school. Now, we're not going to have schools in each of those nodes, but that struck me as important because we don't control the school district and you know, the
Public
community. Right.
But
And
we could
so
have charter schools.
we could, but I think I'm not bringing up the example of a school per se. I'm saying it as that is DPZ's defined most important civic building in any neighborhood. That's in their literature and in their articles and in their book. So I think that's a good example to think about is, you know, these civic buildings may be buildings that have a purpose, but that purpose might be controlled by the entity that has the building. And I think that's the point you're making about the parks, Lindsay. So I think if we were to try to control those civic buildings, we would struggle with that. We would be taking over control of things that would be controlled by other entities.
Anything else to add to that? On number 3, how is the review process to be expedited? Now, where's this down in the letter too? Is this in the letter?
Yeah.
I think that,
Is this a general question?
I thought it said, I think that, that came in under number 12.
Yeah, there you go.
If you look at number 12, it says, consider language that allows for pilot projects to have expedited review process. I mean, I think the point that got made is that because this is an overall code and it's uniform code for the entire area, that would expedite processes for developers too, because they wouldn't have to deal with different codes and I mean, that was what I took out of what I read. I didn't think that there was something else, but staff would know better because they deal with that.
Yeah, I would say that's just, you know, would something be more of a staff level review rather than come, you know, go through planning commission and council? I know I may be jumping ahead a little bit talking about administrative approvals, but anything that could be waived or administratively approved has criteria specifically in a table that, you know, says if you go between like 5 and 8%, you may get this waiver, but if it's a little more or less, then no. So there are guidelines.
And that's in the code proper, so that would expedite the process.
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, so we're kind of stepping into number 4 then too, right? Who's responsible for administrative approval? Is that staff?
It does specifically state the zoning officer or his or her designee.
I will say this is where I would like to speak. I spoke with DPZ about this as well as I mentioned at Planning Commission. I don't know that I would want that responsibility. I would prefer this be something as either me or staff collectively make a recommendation to council and have a body approve it rather than an individual approve something as like a sidewalk waiver or what we just did with the stormwater waivers. Personally, I would prefer that, and I think it would be more consistent with the way we do these other things. I just wanted to throw that one out there.
Would the fact that the code would have more prescriptive language around requirements make it easier for you to make that approval and expedite the approval and make the recommendation for the approval to council?
Yes, but I think we would probably be better to handle these like we just did with these prior waivers. We have criteria for sidewalk waivers. We recommend council approves or not, so.
Yeah, I mean, I get it, you know, and that's how we do it, but then that's not really an administrative approval, right? That's just doing how we normally do it.
But what this does is this, if this cuts out the zoning hearing process. Council, if it's not written into the code, council does not have the authority to deviate from zoning, nor does the zoning officer have the authority to approve something outside of the zoning. So if it were written into the code that under these criteria, it may be,
Administrative.
you know, that would cut out that zoning hearing because the only solution to something outside of zoning is zoning hearing. And that is a whole other process, you know, in and of itself. That could be a, 2-3 month process to even get the board convened, go through the hearing, get the approval. So just putting something into the code, allowing these waivers, allow staff to recommend it, and you, the governing body, approve a recommendation for a waiver or some sort of administrative approval. You're cutting 60, 90 days out of.
I guess maybe I have a misunderstanding, and I wasn't thinking that that was for waiver requests. I was thinking that was just general help expediting of, you know, things that are already in the code.
Well,
The way that it's currently set up in the code is, you know, you have your table of administrative criteria that can be waived, and if it can't, the decision can't be made administratively, then the next step is the zoning hearing board. That's how it is set up currently. So, but, you know, once we're actually diving into all of this nitty gritty, that's the kind of stuff that we'll have to have.
Yeah, so Mark, you're recommending the administrative approval be at council, and then it goes to zoning hearing board. like within that staff?
If they're not satisfied with what council, staff is fine to make a recommendation, but I've seen in the past, council doesn't always like some of my decisions, and they have gone to zoning hearing board to be solved. This would maybe help pull that together and streamline that a little bit for a body to agree with these administrative approvals rather than an individual.
Thoughts on Mark's comments?
Well, if the goal is to expedite those issues, then I like that approach. Better than what you thought we were gonna have to do in this situation.
Okay. I think that answers everything, right? Does it? Did we address everything? I don't know if we answered everything.
I think then my next step I can run these by DPZ and just, ask them in their past experience how administrative approvals have been going, and what they've seen with town centers. And we think we can get some more information from them, so we can do that before PC.
They also may be able to provide, kind of like an à la carte menu of here's some ways that's applied in certain areas, and, for us to talk about. We had some discussion here tonight from a pure zoning officer approval to more of a, a body type approval, just on a recommendation basis. They may have something we haven't thought about yet, so that it goes back to your earlier comment about DPZ and, rely on the expertise that's out there. They've probably seen it work in various ways in various areas, so see what they have to offer. In terms of follow-up with PC, I think once you have some discussion with DPZ, we craft this into a remand clarification letter that could be shared with council before it's pushed on to PC, much like we do the traditional remand.
Okay. All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Great discussion. Matt, are you good? You don't have another joke? All right, we're gonna move on to OB2. Property lease from Clearwater Conservancy for the DCNR grant.
Yeah, before I get started here, I did want to acknowledge two patient people in the room for hanging with us for a couple hours here. Elizabeth Crisfield, who is the Clearwater Conservancy Executive Director, and Ryan Hamilton, who is Clearwater's Land Conservation Manager, are here with us tonight. I'm going to kind of go through my overview memo, but I certainly wanted to provide both of them an opportunity to chime in with comments, either during or after I have a chance to kind of overview here. But just as a refresher, going back to the March 21st meeting, the council did agree at that meeting by a 3-1 vote to serve as an applicant on behalf of Clearwater Conservancy in pursuit of a Community Conservation Partnership Program, C2P2 grant with DCNR. The $300,000 grant application, which was submitted back in early April, seeks to fund or to help offset development costs associated with an ADA compliant trail, providing access from the proposed Community Conservation Center to additional property adjacent to Spring Creek. The grant funds will also be used for the construction of a new parking lot for visitors to the center as well as employees. You'll recall when we talked about this back in March, there were some obligations to College Township as the applicant. The most pressing of that was, in order to serve as the applicant, DCNR requires that you demonstrate long-term, which is 25 years or more, control of the property, either through ownership or some type of lease arrangement or easement. To meet this requirement, Clearwater Conservancy and College Township have been working on a 25-year lease. At the time when we met in March, the lease was in an early draft form and by no means ready for execution by either party. That led to a discussion amongst the council of the basic concept. Are we comfortable enough to advance with submission of the application while work on that lease was still ongoing? And that's really what your vote on March 21st signaled, was you were comfortable with the concept of being the applicant should a lease ultimately be found, be created and found approvable by both Clearwater Conservancy and College Township. The grant application, when it was submitted, is technically incomplete until that lease, that executed lease, is packaged with the application. DCNR did provide us some guidance that they're looking for that to land on their desk sometime here this month. So I do apologize in advance that we're a little late bringing this to you, but it was a tenuous review to get through each of the entities, in particular our solicitor, to make sure that it was tight for what we needed and purposes for the township. So what was coming before you tonight is that lease. Staff from our offices as well as Clearwater have worked with their respective solicitors to draft this final lease. At their meeting, and I don't want to put words in Clearwater's mouth, so please correct me if I'm wrong, at your meeting on May 16th, Clearwater's Board of Directors found the lease acceptable in its current form as is provided as part of your agenda packet. That is a lease that recognizes comments provided by our solicitor, and based on his most recent review, he is also comfortable and finds it acceptable, has the appropriate protections and hold harmless elements in the lease to protect College Township. So where we're at this evening is an opportunity for you as the council to review that lease, provide any feedback if necessary, and barring any substantive revisions that you may have, I'm asking that council consider approving the property lease between Clearwater Conservancy and College Township. So I'm going to stop and I'm going to turn and look at Elizabeth and Ryan if they had any comments they wanted to provide on the lease at this point.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. I'm Ryan Hamilton with Clearwater Conservancy. I just want to say I really, appreciate your consideration of this. We tried to work closely with staff and your solicitor to find something that would really benefit and work well for everyone. And we're really excited about this project that we're developing there. And we think, this lease and kind of public access to this trail is really part of our vision for what we want to see at this community conservation center. So. Yeah, thank you. If you have any questions, we're happy to respond. So.
Yeah, okay, so let's move into questions or comments about the lease. Eric, you want to lead out?
Sure. I said this when Ford was here, and I want to say thank you to Clearwater for everything they do within the community. And I'm quite happy and excited about being able to partner with Clearwater on this. Just two comments. I noticed there's two addresses listed in the lease, but North Atherton Street and the Hauserville. Are they two official?
At the moment, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it really doesn't matter. I was just curious.
Yeah, those are our official addresses at the moment.
And the second thing is, I don't profess to know more than our solicitor does when it comes to legal documents like leases. So if the solicitor is happy with it, I'm happy with it.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted, so the lease actually is only for the 0.14 mile long, 5 foot wide accessible gravel trail, right?
And the parking lot.
And the parking lot. 34 space ADA accessible parking lot. That doesn't need to have a acreage or anything signed to it? You're okay with that?
It'll ultimately, the attachment that'll go with this will be the site plan that spells that out in more clarity.
Okay. That'd be Appendix A, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, what's in there now was kind of what we're operating on, recognizing they still have to go through land development.
Susan?
No, I think if Clearwater's Board of Directors is fine with this, and to Eric's point, if the solicitor has reviewed it and finds it acceptable, I don't think I'm going to overthink that one. So, and thank you. Thank you for all the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody like to make a motion on it?
I lost my place.
I don't have one written in there, so.
You're gonna have to wing it.
You'll have to wing it.
Oh, I'm good at winging stuff. I move that council, who would be executing, is that the chair or the staff?
It would be under chair.
I move to authorize the chair to execute the agreement in OB2 between Clearwater and, the lease agreement in OB2 between Clearwater and the township.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, call question. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, there are none opposed, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, we're gonna talk about Clearwater again.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
New
so,
business.
we'll keep our distinguished guest here. I also acknowledge, I think I saw Jerry poke his way into the room as well. I can't take a whole lot of credit for this. This is a lot of Jerry's work, but I'll do my best to start. And when I inevitably start sinking, Jerry can jump in and help me. So before you tonight is consideration of 2 easements tied back to our MS4 program. And these are easements with Clearwater on the property we were just referencing, the Rockenbeck properties. There we go. So College Township is looking at these easements along Spring Creek to perpetually maintain a project originally constructed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services and Trout Unlimited. College Township received permit compliance credits and offsets for perpetual ownership and maintenance. So this goes back to our MS4 credits that we are required to address as part of our practices. What College Township is proposing is to sign 2 easements with Clearwater Conservancy, one on the west side of the Hauserville Bridge, this being the primary site along College Township open space, and one on the east side of the Hauserville Bridge. And he shows those in the dark sections here. The 2 properties are highlighted, one in yellow, one in red, and the dark sections are the easements in question with Clearwater Conservancy. And those that know the area well, this is essentially both sides of Spring Creek that run through this property. The southern section there of the red does actually touch property owned by College Township. It's the open space associated with the Spring Creek Estates development. So as it rolls down the hill, there's open space behind Spring Creek Estates that College Township does own. So these are the 2 easements in question that we were looking to work with Clearwater Conservancy on. Associated with both of these easements are maintenance agreements as well. So what College Township is proposing is that Clearwater maintain the MS4 easements on behalf of the township to grant continued compliance offsets and credits. To do this, College Township, it would provide a nominal annual fee, $1,400 roughly, to Clearwater for spraying of invasives, bank stabilization, and other MS4 required components. Riparian components beyond the MS4 base requirements are not reimbursable by College Township and are managed by Clearwater's own finances. With those, we would then require 2 maintenance agreements. So we have the easements and then an agreement that comes with Clearwater Conservancy to maintain those easements on our behalf. And there would be a maintenance agreement that goes with both of those easements, the one on the west side and the one on the east side of the bridge. And again, this is what those would look like. Now you see in this image that easement now shows the property that is on College Township side as well. So it's encompassing both sides of the stream as it works through these properties. In order for DEP MS4 credits offsets to be granted, both stream banks must be managed and controlled. Areas where Clearwater or College Township own the combined stream banks are eligible and will be managed. One note, and I'll go back to this image. Currently, if you look to the right side, there's the Houts property. We do not currently have an easement with the Houts property, so we cannot control both sides of the stream bank. So that section is currently deemed ineligible and would not be as part of this overarching work with Clearwater. And I'm going to stop and allow Jerry, if he would want to come forward, if there's anything you need to clarify, Jerry. Guess I missed the project cost part.
Good evening. I think you covered that very well. This has been in progress since 2018, 2019. You'll remember these are a 5-year cycle. We are in year 4 of the 5-year cycle, and the preparation for this 5-year cycle started years before that. So it's been a long time coming. We're getting there. Region-wide, we're getting there. So that's kind of where we're at. I'd love to take any questions or provide any further clarification you may have.
One additional note, going back to the original project cost, If we were going to do this on our own, we were looking at a project cost of $110,000, plus an ongoing annual maintenance fee. Because the work has been done by Trout Unlimited and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, now we're just looking at a maintenance fee. So what was a $110,000 project is now an ongoing maintenance.
Okay. All right, I'll go first with questions this time. So the easements are with Clearwater-owned property, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so what we own technically is no easement on that.
Right. It's just a reflection.
So because we own it, we control both sides.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And so how long will we be able to, forgive me for, how long will we be able to bank this for MS4, right? Like how long can we claim all of this maintenance and upkeep?
so
Perpetual?
the MS4 program requires us to have a certain number of credits and offsets per year in perpetuity. And so the easement is set up in perpetuity, and our ownership on our side,
So
we
we can
assume
claim
and
it every
DEP
year.
accepts would be in perpetuity. So every year we complete an annual report, we submit that September 30th, and we check the box that say, we have this project, we continue to maintain this project, it is still functioning as a stream side buffer, performing nutrient uptake, has cover for the stream to protect temperature, and fulfills those goals.
All right, but it's up to the state annually though on how much credit we get though. Like that could change, right?
It's locked into the PRP for this cycle.
So we get that.
Back in
that
2018, 2019, we produced the PRP report. Pollutant Reduction Plan is the acronym, and we said that this project will produce X number of credits. We had public meetings, the public blessed that, we submitted that to DEP, DEP blessed that, and it's referenced in our permit.
Okay.
So these projects, per their rules and guidelines, have been blessed. The future section along Houts, if Houts would give us an easement and we would extend this area, we don't know if we would get exactly the same amount of credit, a different amount of credit. So there's no, we're not banking credits for the future, is I guess the point that I'm making.
Yeah.
We're trying to fulfill our needs now, and stay ahead, not be right on that cusp, but.
Okay. All right, thanks. My last question then is so I saw a couple different, because of the different easements, a couple different maintenance numbers. What's the total amount that we're gonna be on our, annual budget, right? That we're gonna have to pay for maintenance?
It comes out to about $1,400 an acre, and that's what we were looking at. So less than $5,000 is the very short answer. Right now, we know that we are eligible for, I want to step away from the microphone. We know that we are getting credit for everything on the red side, everything east of the Hauserville Bridge. We're going to petition DEP for credit on the west side, so we don't know that we have that yet. But what we get credit for from DEP will need to be maintained. And we have very great public works folks, but maintaining riparian buffers is not their wheelhouse. Clearwater, that is their wheelhouse. So they've come up with a fee of what it costs to maintain an acre of riparian buffer, and that's, in my opinion, a much easier way to go because they know what they're doing. Their experience in identifying plants is far ahead of mine. So.
Okay. That's all I had. Susan?
The plan makes sense.
Yeah, and it seems like very fortunate circumstances for us in particular, thanks to the good work of JR, Clearwater, and Trout Unlimited.
Yeah.
Can't argue with the numbers.
I also believe there's a benefit to Clearwater that they, they have a mission to do these types of projects as well. And if we can assist them with, some maintenance dollars to help their mission, this is a perfect win-win. This is the, Trout Unlimited, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, they did their project to fulfill their goals. So this has a trickle-down effect of, things coming together and working very well.
Yeah.
That's how I see it.
Okay. Anything else to add?
This is an action item, correct?
Yes.
So I will move also then to authorize the chair, the council chair, to execute the agreement included in NB1 between College Township and Clearwater. Easement agreement between,
Easement and maintenance agreements.
easement and maintenance agreement between College Township and Clearwater.
There's actually two of them.
Yeah, there's,
Okay.
Two motions?
I mean, I
There's
don't know if
There's
you
the
need
east and the
motion for
west.
both the east and the west, or is one motion? gonna
I think
do
you
it?
can take it all in one.
Okay, all right.
You know,
All in one? Both?
All right.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Any further discussion?
No. Thank you, everyone. Jared, Laura.
I did have one clarifying question before we call a question. So you did mention that the west still isn't quite approved by DEP, is that what you said, Jerry?
That's correct.
Okay, but we can still do the easement agreement, it doesn't bar us from executing that
It
easement
does
agreement?
not bar us from doing the easement, it does not bar us from doing these agreements. When we did this in 2019, we didn't imagine Clearwater would be the owner. There was a lot of win-wins here. So being able to extend the area, the easement we're actually requesting and that we're working with Clearwater for actually comes down along this right side and then crosses so that we would have access to get through there without mucking things up. So there is a symbiotic purpose to what we're doing here and being able to work together on these things. So if at some point in the future DEP chooses to go a different direction and this arrangement no longer would be in play, there are out clauses in all these agreements and easements that, you know, we could go that route, but.
Okay. All right, thanks. All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And we have none opposed, motion carries. Thank
thanks,
you.
Jerry.
Okay, any staff informatives?
I know. I'm embarrassed.
It's only 9:20.
It's
It's been a long
So
time.
we had four, we have to sign four things, two easements, two maintenance agreements, and that
Yep.
was all in that.
All in that, captured
Oh,
in
yeah.
one
Okay.
all-encompassing motion.
Yeah,
The all-in-one motion.
yeah, you're good.
I
Okay,
moved to Dustin sign everything.
yeah.
Whatever I give him?
All things
From here-
ever.
From this day forward.
All things ever.
Any other matters?
Only thing I would bring to you is just a reminder of our CIP work session on Wednesday, the 12th, starting at 5 o'clock. And Jen is going to arrange for a lunch or a supper that evening, so bring your books and let's get after it.
Should we come early for
You
that?
can, if I can have it here, I'll probably have it here between 4:30 and 4:45.
Well, just so we know beforehand,
Yeah, it'll be here about 4:45, give you some
and if
time.
that's the expectation, or,
Okay. I didn't know if you could get here earlier.
it sounds like maybe coffee should be also included.
Maybe. There's coffee right out the door, right outside the door.
All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We're adjourned.